And there we are. We are live. So, first of all, I want to thank you for coming on to doing this interview with me. And
No
I
worries. It's a
want,
pleasure.
yeah, thank you. And I want to introduce you as you are a producer, director, author, and a cinema expert or Italian cinema historian, pretty much, right?
Yeah, no, that's yeah. Thank you for that introduction. Yeah, I think film historian is correct. I think yeah, I'm that's me.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, what would you like to talk about? I'm open to any topic you can throw at me.
Well, the first thing I want to talk about is the work that you do because you seem incredibly busy.
Yes.
With especially this past couple of weeks and the coming months, you have uh, like 100 releases. It seems like that are coming out from all different companies and labels. Uh, how do you keep your sanity, so to say?
Well, I mean, I have to say, I when I started working within the home video world, which was roughly, I mean, about 10 years ago, 9 years ago, something like that.
Really?
I was doing other stuff at the time as well. I wasn't exclusively doing home video, but the impression not only I had personally, but what a lot of people were telling me was, this is a dying industry and it's not going to last long and all that. And to be fair, when I started out, I mean, there were loads of boutique labels, and it's not as if the crisis or the concept, the idea of everything ending was particularly visible. Uh, but there was indeed shortly after, within the following 2, 3 years, an evident renaissance. I can say I baptized some labels that started out around the time I was beginning, and I sort of united forces with them. Others, I had already been doing it for a while, and I sort of um, yeah, introduced them to many different aspects of the industry. I'm thinking of Treasured Films, for example, British label. Um, Unfortunately, the short-lived Fractured Visions, Cauldron Films would be a big one. I started out with them on their first release. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's been an incredibly fervid and busy industry over the past few years. And well, I think this boils down to a few things. I think on the one side, streaming services have sort of shown their true face. What was promised was going to be, you're going to have this virtual library, at your fingertips and all that. We all now all too well know that that's not the case. Films get taken away, get moved, shuffled around among different streaming services. Some disappear entirely. Not to mention the fact that um, if you are looking for films that are not particularly recent, God knows what you'll find. The masters used are sometimes awful. Um, Very poor. Original languages are missing. Subtitles sometimes are missing with older films. All this sort of stuff here. Cut versions. So I think that on the one side, and a lot of directors championing physical media. I mean, as we know, Guillermo del Toro, Christopher Nolan, and many others have been, pushing their fans to buy physical media and to see films in the best way possible. So that united with I think the capacity that boutique labels have had to sort of reinvigorate their brands and give products that are nearly an immersive experience. I mean, now if you buy a film, and you watch all the extras and all the special features and read the booklet, you can come out of the experience knowing pretty much anything you could possibly want to know of the film. So that immersive experience, which to a certain degree was present even in DVD, has definitely refined. Now we see it on a scale, and it involves films that before, we were lucky to even have in the first place, let alone in these lavish releases. So, yeah, it's been good. And as far as my sanity, yeah, there's a lot, but I'm happy. I like keeping busy, um, and I'm capable of doing more the more I'm given, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
If you give me one task and a year to do it, I'll probably deliver it late. If you give me 100 tasks and 1 week to do it, um, I'll do it all and maybe more. So yeah, it's a special kind of sickness. Hold on, I have to get my charger because my computer's about to die on me. There we
All good.
go.
Yep.
Done.
Yes, all
Yes,
good.
good.
All good.
So
And
yes, good,
yeah,
we are.
so talking about streaming, I just want to have your thoughts about Netflix potentially buying Warner Brothers, which, I mean, Netflix are known for not doing any sort of physical media at all. What's the future there? Does it look grim?
It looks grim. I mean, it was looking grim before as well.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
well, when it comes to films, it's complex. I'm talking feature-length films, not just audiovisual in the market in general. I think on the one side, the problem is cultural. I think people, especially younger generations, are less interested in the feature film
Mm.
format, and I think um, this is because, and it's not only younger people; it's the entire world. Uh, we are we've acquired a lot of skills. We're much more skilled on many more levels than we were, say, 20, 30, 40 years ago. However, we our level of concentration is going down substantially down, and there are many, many, many studies about this. We're pretty much goldfish at this point.
Yes.
I believe the average continuative amount of time we're able to concentrate is about 8 seconds, and then our mind goes elsewhere before going back to the whatever thing, whatever task at hand there is. Um, we consume media on a whole different level compared to the 70s, 80s, 90s. I mean, we are continuously consuming media, audiovisual media, on a level that we never did. Reels and videos and TikTok, and we're just constantly bombarded with um, with audiovisual material, um, which has because we function and we consume social media way more than we do anything else, and we're not only referring it and comparing it to films, I think the that has become our baseline when it comes to consuming audiovisual material. So we are less capable of concentrating. Hence, also keep in mind also the massive financial crisis and recession that we've gone through, and going back to 2006 onwards. I mean, Western society, which is collapsing on many different levels, not only when it comes to how we consume entertainment, uh, but that united um, with how we consume media, united with our incapacity of concentrating, which all links into the fact that we're lacking critical thinking. We have more notions. We have more data stored in our brains, but we are seeing increasingly a lack of critical thinking. We are functionally illiterate. We don't understand as well as we did collectively as a society how to interpret the world around us. Hence, also a lot of films that oversimplify. Now we're also, studios are also discussing how to conceive product, and we already see it with things produced by streaming services, how to conceive product which can be watched while being on a phone. So if you put all this together, um, yes, Netflix buying Warner and all its various assets is a tragedy. Yes, it will definitely harm the way we use and the theater experience. Yes, it harms the film industry, but this is a deeper problem than that. And cinema has been dying, and in the way we intend cinema and the cinematic experience has been dying long before this.
Absolutely. And it's sad, absolutely sad. Which leads me into another thing is that Italian cinema sort of had a peak period from like the mid to late 60s until the mid 80s. And then it sort of died out because of TV. Was it really because of TV? Because all the channels, satellite and cable TV started coming in and making so that the people didn't go to the cinemas anymore.
Yeah, well, I mean, as far as Italy's peak period, it depends what we intend, because I would make the case that the peak years were from the, let's say, first half of the 1950s, tending
Okay.
towards the mid 50s,
Mm.
to the, being very generous, the late 70s, early 80s.
Okay. Yeah.
I would say those roughly 30 years. Um, I mean, the reasons behind the crisis of the Italian film industry is many. Yes, television is a huge part, naturally, of that. Um, um, but again, you could look at the television was rising, cable television, private broadcasting was, that sort of stuff was growing in many countries. So that's not exclusively in Italy. Um, yes, there was a certain degree of savagery due to Berlusconi in Italy and Silvio Berlusconi and the way he monopolized the private sector of television. But, and of course, before that, the pirate like way that the private broadcasters sort of dominated the market. So, all that is undoubtedly true. But it's also cultural. Um, you know, there was a lack of interest on when it comes to the political side of things to save cinema. and this is due to the fact that in Italy, genre cinema, which, by the way, when we talk about Italy, we use this word genre cinema. Um, but we don't use that word when it comes to many other countries. We don't look at Alfred Hitchcock and say, or any American thriller of quality, and say, oh, that's a genre film. Oh, we say that's a thriller, that's directed by so and so, that's a good film, that's a bad film. When it comes to Italian cinema, it was the Italians first and foremost that sort of took the lessons of took the notions, the concepts of the Carriera do Cinema and didn't know how to apply them. So we created this sort of hierarchy and vademecum, this kind of rule book on how you judge films, what is art house, what is genre, what is dignified, what isn't, what is good, what is bad, what is low, what is high, all this. But it was based on very superficial things, on aspects such as sort of how can I put it, exterior elements, the general plot, if it looked and felt and smelt and tasted like a film made primarily for entertainment. These aspects were the ones um, with how films were judged in Italy. So if a director, no, even if he's mediocre, is making a film about a struggling farmer has to deal with the death of his daughter, it's automatically dignified cinema. If it's a film about a bank heist or a film, that revolves around some sort of mystery, it's automatically, you know, unless
Downgraded.
it's made by somebody who's already an established author. So there was the lack of comprehension on behalf of politics to understand that Italian genre cinema, or popular cinema, I prefer using popular cinema,
Mm,
was fundamental to the functioning of the industry. I say industry because we made loads of films and we were one of the biggest, if not the biggest industry after Hollywood in the Western Hemisphere. However, it wasn't really an industry because industry, you imagine, Hollywood has America, I say, United States have the Hollywood system, had a studio system, a hierarchy. You use the word B movie to indicate a film that was made within a certain production milieu. In Italy, we never had a studio system. There were big producers, there were small producers, but it was all transversal. Big producers would make, even exploitation films, would make genre films, would make pure entertainment on a big budget, on a small budget. It was completely transversal. Carlo Ponti produced Toto Zivago and then Torso. Dino De Laurentiis in the 50s was producing, Cape and Dagger films, but then was producing Fellini, or was producing you know, War and Peace. So it was completely transversal, both in the way production companies function, but also in the case of talent. This lack of order, this lack also of a compacted view on how to develop and structure workflow and industry led also to the death of Italian cinema. The fact that nobody was united, there wasn't a union that functioned properly. Um, so we didn't survive the crisis, although because we were such a big industry, people think, oh, but the 80s weren't bad in Italy when it comes to film because they made so many. But it's because, a giant makes, it takes a lot to kill it. So the Italian film industry was this massive giant. So even if it was on the floor, its wheezings, lasted a lot. So you can look at the early 90s and go, oh, but, there was still a lot happening. Yeah, but it was already dying. Maybe the industry hadn't let yet, you know, um, hadn't yet sort of shut his eyes and went into the went into that silent night, but it was definitely in that direction. Then, of course, I mean, it continued existing in some form, but never as an industry, never as something as big as what it had been. I mean, there were films that had Oscar nominations, Mediterraneo, Life is Beautiful by Roberto Benigni, which is a pile of massive shit. I mean, it's a terrible film, but it still won an Oscar. It was very popular. Um, there was some big directors that come out from Italy, Paolo Sorrentino, some directors of born in the 70s and 80s continued working. Pugliati continued working. Giuseppe Tornatore, so who made big films and still makes big films. So it exists, but the industry at one point, or let's say the filmic world, started not existing anymore, and the successes, it's more of a filmic country, and the successes were the successes of single directors. It wasn't the success of this milieu working and sort of functioning, although in this very haphazard and disorganized way. But it was more like, okay, that director managed to make a film despite the situation Italy is in.
Yes. Um, and because you didn't have a studio system, is that one reason that the directors sort of didn't stay doing just one genre? They jumped all around. They were, I don't want to call them journeymen, but they were working directors. I mean, you see Martino and Fulci and Lenzi and all of them. They made film movies in all kinds of genres, not just horror genres. But why was that really? Why did they do? Was it just because that was what they were offered? Was it because of money, all, or was it because that was the trend at the time to do a shark movie or to do a cannibal movie or zombie movie?
Well, you are correct, obviously. I mean, many of these directors, not all of them. I mean, we see quite a few that were selective and would not touch certain genres, despite they
Yeah.
were popular. I mean, Sergio Corbucci comes to
Yes.
mind for political reasons, but he wasn't the only one. Duccio Tessari as well, and Giulio Petroni. They all didn't touch crime movies because crime movies were associated and labeled, sometimes fair enough, sometimes very superficially, as reactionary. They were perceived as proto fascist. So a lot of directors that were left leaning, or many were subscribed to the Communist Party, like in the case of Corbucci. They didn't touch crime films in the same way many didn't touch sex comedies. Because they considered it vulgar, not
Mm.
for puritanical reasons, just considered it a vulgar
Yeah.
genre, or should I say subgenre. Um, so we do see a lot of directors moving around. I mean, Leone would be an example, Argento, Bava as well, Lamberto Bava, Michele Soavi, all the last three directors I mentioned, Soavi, Bava, and Argento, touched. They had a passion for the fantastical, for horror, for so they only really did that. I mean, there are exceptions, of course. Bava makes Blast Fighter, for example, and Argento does the 5 days. But I mean, generally, they stick pretty much
Yeah.
to a small number of genres. So we do see a lot of them. Tinto Brass would be another obvious example of somebody who pretty much, at least from a certain moment onwards, stick to just a couple of genres. There were others that were a lot more content to um, satisfy the market's needs. However, we do see coherent. No, I shouldn't say coherent. More like a fil rouge, more like a recurring element. For example, um, Lucio Fulci. Lucio Fulci, he was capable, had the talent of making every genre he touched
Yes.
uh, his own genre. So, yes, he did a crime film, but it's such a hybrid film which really explores themes and sort of aesthetic, visual solutions and aspects that are much more closer to himself and to his own vision than to the genre he's being asked to deal with. So um, other directors, would move from one genre to the other, but they were always careful of, you know, bringing their own sort of more values, I would say, moral, ethical values. I mean, um, at least to a certain point, we see that with Lenzi, because um, Lenzi was an anarchist, politically speaking, and you can see it. You can see. I mean, if you look at crime films by Lenzi and you see crime films by Castellari, they're different. They're different in the way, and even more different are the ones by Martino or Fernando Di Leo. Although Fernando Di Leo didn't do polizieschi, did more noirs or gangster movies, but they're all very different, and the backbone is political. Lenzi looks at his criminals, even the worst ones, with a certain social political consciousness. They're never completely bad, or they're slightly sympathetic, or at least there's some sort of, even if very superficial, social political reason for them becoming what they've become. Whereas in the case of someone like um, Castellari, less so, because his ideals are more on the right. Castellari is a much more right-leaning director, and you can see it. His films are still very powerful, some of them, but they're very different. So they still bring their political values. You have to also consider that when everything goes apeshit is when we hit the 80s, because up until the end of 1970s, we don't even Alensi is moving around. He's not moving that much. He kind of pretty much you can see sort of a clear path, but it's from, in some cases 1977, 78, in other cases a little down the line. It's when directors are really forced to do stuff they wouldn't want to do. I mean, we think of Fulci as, the godfather of gore and this, master of horror films. He didn't want to do horror films. He didn't want to do horror films. This is he's gone on the record.
Yeah.
He came from some financial failures. He was given Zombie 2, Zombie 2, Zombie Flesh Eaters, or Zombie. Um, that he was not even the first choice to shoot that film. It had been offered to
Yes.
Castellari. Castellari made Fulci, mentioned Fulci as an option because he wasn't interested in horror films. Castellari. Um,
Wasn't
um,
he even the third choice, as I understand it?
sorry.
Wasn't he even a third choice? Like he was not even the second choice behind Castellari for that movie. He
Yeah, no,
was
he was chosen immediately after Castellari, but
okay.
before Castellari there had been others. So Full Sheep had to adapt to the market. He did it well until he was given good enough budgets. He did it well, um, very well, in fact, to the point that now he's associated to that genre in a
Yes.
way that a few others are. Other directors, made some attempts, but then went, fuck it, like, I'm not working like this, because they were asked to work on smaller budgets, um, and work for exclusively for the international foreign markets, not anymore, for specific ones or for Italy. Alberto De Martino made a few attempts and then decided that, I'm not doing this, I'm going away. Romolo Guerrieri, some I mentioned before, Giulio Petroni, um, even Fernando Di Leo made some attempts and then kind of went, no, I'm not doing this. Others became script doctors, like in the case of De Martino. Others still went back to TV commercials. Others became ghost directors for television, or
Mm.
all that sort of stuff. Others became writers. They all changed, but or script writers. But it's really from the 80s that the market could not anymore cater to the needs of directors that even before were asked to on some level to compromise, but they could compromise with um, choices and with good enough budgets and with their own specific style and voice. And then from a certain moment onwards, that wasn't possible. Lenzi goes completely awire. He starts making all sorts of films. um, but it was the spasmic reaction to the crisis.
Yes, I agree. I mean, Fulci's has said that his finest movie was Beatrice Cenci, which is like a drama piece, basically, which is a wonderful movie. I think it's absolutely
Yes.
probably his most underrated movie because it's never gets talked about.
Yeah. No, it's a good
Uh,
film. It's a very good film.
yes, it really is. It's really a fantastic movie yeah, I really love it. It's a great one. So I
Yeah.
want to change a little bit and talk about more the work that you do.
Mhm.
When you get approached, I by a company like 88 Films or Treasure or something to do a movie, from when you start working until it gets actual physical release, how long period of time is it?
Oh, it depends. I mean, so with every label, there's a different modus operandi.
Yeah.
Some labels will contact me and basically say, "This is the film we want to release. This is the budget. Do what you want or do what you
Yeah.
can."
Yeah.
Other labels are a little bit more hands-on, but essentially, they give me a budget. They obviously tell me what film they want to release. They give me a budget and a time frame. I come up with plan, and this is when I'm the content producer. Other times I'm approached just for one thing, like we want a couple of featurettes, or we want an audio commentary, or video essay, or booklet, or whatever. When I'm the content producer, yeah, I just handle this budget and basically do as much as I can. It depends. It depends. Sometimes I can't mention. I can't mention what film it is because it hasn't been announced yet. But a big label contacted me about 3 months ago and said, um, "We have this film. We are incredibly late. We waited last moment. We want to pack it with extras because it's a 4K limited edition, but we have nothing. This is a budget. It was a big budget. This is the budget. Do what you can, but you have 1 month."
Oh.
Um, I managed to pack it. It's absolutely filled. More could have been done, but it was 1 month. 1 month can be a long time. So I think for this specific film release, there were 8 on-camera interviews, a booklet, an audio commentary, and I think a video essay or two. I don't remember. Anyway, it's a big boy. Um, and 1 month can be a long time, it can be a short time. It depends. Because when you're producing special features, you don't know what will happen. So, if people are available, logistics, where you're shooting, you have to send camera operators. Sometimes you have to bat. An interview can cost little or a lot, depending on where they are. Travel expenses for the camera operators if it's far away, um, fees, talent asking you for money. So you have to kind of balance everything out and make a lot of decisions on the basis of, okay, for example, this interview would cost this amount, but then is it worth it? Because if I do this interview, then I can't do another two. So do I do two with maybe smaller names, or do I do one with a bigger name? So you have to kind of always balance things out, and so yeah, usually from the moment I am commissioned. something, a package of extras as a content producer, to the when I deliver everything done and dusted, edited, all that as mixed and color corrected and all the bells and whistles put on. It's usually, it can be between 2 weeks and 2 months.
Oh, really? I actually thought it was longer. I thought it was going to be like 6 or 7 months. It was going to take a long time because of
Oh
what
no,
you said when you travel so much around to do all these interviews and all stuff. So, oh, I'm surprised,
no,
really
no.
surprised.
Yeah.
Like one of your more recent releases was Hitchhike.
Ah, yeah.
Absolutely wonderful movie, uh, which really deserved to get a lavish package like this because it hasn't had a good release for a long time and very underrated movie. Uh, when you do an audio commentary, how do you prepare? Do you like rewatch the movie before you do research, or do you do the audio commentary by like having actual points to go through, or just by flow, so to say?
Well, so yeah, I definitely watch the film, but usually like in the case of Hitchhike, I was a content producer, so by the time I recorded the audio commentary, I'd already, because you check pre-edits,
Yeah,
you follow up with interviews, you're producing all the extras, so you've seen the film multiple times.
yeah,
You've seen it only once in its entirety. Obviously, you know, I don't want to say every single film, but I would say the vast majority. I mean, 97% of the films I'm asked to work on, I have already seen to
yeah,
begin with. So Hitchhike, I'd already seen. I owned it on VHS, and then DVD. I had the old Blue Underground DVD and all that. But so yeah, so I definitely watched the film, and I usually have been forced to watch it more times than I care to remember. And I usually go with the flow. I usually do interviews with another person or another
yeah,
two people, maybe
yeah,
Marcus, like in the case of Hitchhike, or Troy Howarth, or
yeah.
Nathaniel Thompson, or a number of others, Nanni Cobritti. And that's how I like it. I respect who does it, but I personally, even as a listener, don't like audio commentaries that are excessively scripted. Um, and at the end of the day, um, the human mind can only absorb a certain amount of information. So if you pack, I mean, this is my personal philosophy. I mean, if you pack every second, every minute of an audio commentary with just dense information. So, oh, here we are at minute 11 minutes and 5 seconds. We can see that extra is actually the one in that other scene. And oh, and by the way, this scene was, if it's all just packed with information, I know there are a lot of people that appreciate that. And I do try to put as much as information as possible. And I try to do that with all the features I produce. But at the end of the day, you're not going to fucking remember all that. So it's better, I think, to unpack certain topics. Obviously, give information, but unpack topics and give people some food for thought that they might say, you know what, I disagree, that's bullshit. Or they might
Mm.
say, that's interesting. And it sort of, it begins a conversation with themselves. That to me is more interesting than just data, hard data, 1 hour and a half of just one piece of information after the other, which is anyway usually present to begin with in other features present within the film. So to me, yeah,
You sort of go with the flow
that's
mostly. That sounds good. So I guess I want to switch topics again. I like to do that.
let's
But
do that.
yeah, good. Politsieski. Uh, was Politsieski very political? Because at the time when they were most popular, I guess in the 70s, there were a lot of troubles and terrorism in Italy. Was it big oh, how do I phrase it? Was it really political, or was it just they did? It was popular at the time, but what did
No, it was
the
political.
yeah
100% political.
yeah yeah
100%. I mean,
yeah
crime films or polizieschi um, is a okay. So some people will tell you that, oh, it's they're imitating the successes of Dirty Harry and the French Connection and
yes
etc. etc. Um, well, frankly, that's bullshit. I mean, yes, yes, of course, there are some films that did that. Yeah, that is undoubtedly true. And maybe some certain dynamics, like certain car chases, were definitely, they sort of picked up certain ideas from big American successes when it comes to certain films. But to say that crime films in Italy in the 1970s are a direct reaction to American films is not true. We crime films in Italy start out by combining a number of different things. Within crime films, we see a certain trend of social political films that had been extremely popular in Italy in the 1960s. We see Elio Petri, and not only Investigation on a Citizen Above Suspicion, but many other films by Elio Petri. Damiano Damiani, Carlo Lizzani, Giuliano Montaldo. We see these directors and others, Luigi Zampa, um, they had already been exploring certain themes. In fact, La Polizia Ringrazia, Execution Squad, yeah, by Stefano Vanzina, was a film that sort of combined certain popular strands, even coming from the United States, with what was already being dealt with in Italy in certain films. Neorealism is also another influence. It's in the DNA of many directors, even if they don't explicitly um, reference Rossellini and Vittorio De Sica and De Santis. And you can tell you can see it in the texture of a lot of crime films because they're set in real locations, in real suburbs, in real shanty towns in the outskirts of the city, often using in small roles and sort of as background artists or background extras, real criminals and real people from the street. And it's sort of there's that documentary style, which is not present in all, mind you. I'm overgeneralizing, but
mm.
it is present in a fair number. So it's a combination of things, and even those films that move from American successes, it 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 unhinged the American approach and sort of dissected it. And it's like what happened with westerns. Westerns became something completely different. It had more to do with politics. Again, westerns are very political genre. Post Leone, post for a fistful of dollars, Western increasingly becomes political and contaminated as well with other subgenres and genres like giallo in some cases. And we see this strain of the so-called tortilla Western or revolutionary Westerns, such as Te Pepa, Blood and Guns, or Viva la Rivoluzione, and films by Damiano Damiani, like a Bullet for the General, and certain films by Lizzani or Sergio Corbucci. Uh, so Italy was capable and was sort of had that vivacity. You've disappeared on me.
Oh yeah,
There we
sorry,
go.
I got a call.
Um, no worries. That
Yeah.
vivacity, put Italian filmmakers in the condition of taking aspects and changing them completely. So yeah.
Another thing that I had sort of discovered when watching Polizieschi and Giallo and Italian horror is there always seems to be a strand of comedy, like a foolish person that sort of brings in comedy to sort of bring down the seriousness of a movie. It's at points, at least. I all seem to see it a lot of times. Is that, am I thinking the right way there? That it's always has to be some sort of bit of comedy in the movies. To me, when
Yes,
I,
to
when you look at like Brothers Till We Die with Thomas
Mhm.
Milian, it's a bit of comedy as well, not just a serious Polizieski. Same thing with Jallos and all that.
Yes, to a certain degree, that is true. I mean, comedy has always been the successful genre in Italy.
Okay.
That's the genre um, Italians sort of um, tapped into the most. Comedy was the genre they loved the most. And it's the genre that survived every crisis, it survived every decade. There's always churning out comedies and comedic directors and actors and all that. On that's on the one side. On the other side, you know, it depended. There are a lot of I can think of a lot of Jolly that don't have necessarily comedic aspects and crime films. I mean, Brothers Till You Die is a good example, like other Lenzi films from that era. So we're in the later half of the 1970s, so 1976, 77,
Yeah.
78. That's when Polizieschi were changing. They were changing, they were going through a metamorphosis, the same sort of metamorphosis Westerns had gone through at the beginning of the decade, let's say starting from the end of the 60s to the beginning of the 70s. In other words, there had been an inflation, an overinflation, oversaturation of the market, which led um, producers and directors to find other narrative sort of interpretive keys. So in the case of westerns, they were jolly, they were more comedic, they even tried kung fu westerns at one point, like the films by Mario Caiano. In the case of um, Polizieschi, we see them contaminated with Jolly, we see that fusion with erotica, we
Mm.
see various variations, gangster movies, and more action oriented films that had little to do with the procedural aspect you'd expect from a crime film. And then, but then inevitably, after all these attempts, it's always comedy. Comedy arrives at some point. Brothers Till You Die sort of taps into that. It's more vitriolic, it's caustic film. Um, it's also ironic that it's a very tragic film in a way because it's a very
Yes.
sad film. It's about the death of a certain criminal world, which makes it sound uh, like it shouldn't be sad, but it is sad in the sense that Rome is changing in that film, and a certain um, a certain mentality is changing, and the middle class is sort of squashing the proletarian substrate, and certain people feel marginalized. So it's kind of captures in a very sort of lensy kind of way that sort of world that what was happening there. But at the same time, there was a lot of comedic aspects, taking advantage of Thomas Milian's sort of very physical interpretive skills. But that was a little bit Lenzi because Lenzi did have that in his DNA to begin with. It's definitely in Thomas's Milian's set of skills, and it had to do at the same time with that element there, in the sense that the more fierce um, variation had died. People wanted comedy also because all these films were a reaction to what was happening in the country. Some films are very precise about what they're putting on scene. Some directors are very political and want to be. Others are political, but they are in a gut way. They're just reacting to what's on the newspapers. Um, but they were all reacting to what was happening in Italy, which was an incredible period. I mean, we had politicians being kidnapped and killed. We had journalists being being targeted. It was a period of black and red terrorism, although mostly black, mostly fascist terrorism, el terrorismo nero. So, and I think people were tired of that bleakness. So I think, a lot of films were also reacting to different needs.
Yes. Very interesting. Very interesting. I guess I want to talk about the trends. Is how when an alien movie became popular, Italy made 1,000 different alien movies, or when Jaws became popular, there were 1,000 shark movies. Were they all about like cashing in as quickly as possible? Same thing with like Poliziesco became popular. There were 1,000 Poliziesco movies.
It's different because the poliziesco or crime genre is a genre, you know.
Yeah.
So it's always existed. I mean, you can look at, we didn't call it poliziesco, but if you go back to Italian cinema of the 1950s, you can see crime films. In one of the great Italian films is a film by Pietro Germi called Un maledetto imbroglio. I forget what the international title is, but that is a great, very dark, wonderful crime film. So I mean, that is a genre. The films reacting to specific successes, maybe Jaws, maybe Star Wars, maybe whatever, The Exorcist.
Yeah.
That's a different story. Um, well, I mean, the two examples you mentioned, the shark movies and um, the what's the other one you mentioned? It's on the tip of my tongue.
Alien movies, space alien
Alien
movies.
movies.
Yes. Yeah.
They come in the very late 70s,
Yes. Yes.
very, very, very late
Yeah.
70s and early 80s onwards. So we are already at a moment in which, we could look at post-apocalyptic films. We can
Mm,
look at, a number of different, Escape from New York and The Warriors. They all generated a lot of imitators.
yes.
But that is, again, we go back to what was happening in the 80s. That was directors and producers that couldn't really function independently. They were
Okay.
not thinking anymore of the, because remember that, Gialli, the films from the 1970s, westerns, crime films, peplums, all these different subgenres were first and foremost made for Italians. And then they would go abroad. They were thought, obviously, in such a way, not all of them, because we tend to think, oh, they wanted to export all these films. Yeah, they did to a point, but at the same time, they wanted to. They were thinking also of national gross. By the 1980s, that was not the case. They were thinking of what
Mhm.
will the Americans buy?
Okay.
What will the Southeast Asian market buy? Germany, France, Canada. These were so it became increasingly more imitational and less kind of like, let's take an idea from this success and make something completely different, or make something that vibes in a very different way, that has a different energy, that has different ideas. So this is what was happening at the time. Keep in mind, a lot of directors, well, a lot, quite a few directors managed to make still interesting films
Mm.
despite having been asked to imitate something, and still managed to infuse their films with something unique, but it was still at heart purely imitational cinema.
Mm. Yes. And one of those trends is the cannibal movie, or the cannibal became incredibly popular for a while there, and there were many cannibal movies. And you actually have a book coming out in January. It's going to be
Yes.
should be very exciting. I'm really looking forward to it. I have it on. I was part of the Kickstarter, so really looking forward to it. And What can you
Yeah,
tell me? Yeah,
cannibal move cannibal movies are interesting. So cannibal movies are, first of all, a subgenre
yeah,
uh, that did not start from big success. There wasn't a big, an American or French or German success, and then this is completely autochthonous.
yeah.
I mean, obviously, somebody could say, well, The Mountain of the Cannibal God is inspired by, a certain 1950s American adventure film. Um, uh, there are influences, especially if you go in the 1980s with films like Massacre in Dinosaur Valley or White Slaves or Amazonia, the Catherine Miles story. They're definitely American uh, sort of inputs, but for the most part, it's autochthonous, and it starts with the fusion of a certain kind of adventure film that was being made in Italy as well in the 1960s, together with Mondo movies, which are a massive influence on cannibal movies. But it really started spontaneously. It wasn't, as we know, it didn't really start with, oh, let's make a cannibal movie. It started with a film called Deep River Savages, or The Man from the Deep River by Umberto Lenzi, that had a cannibal scene within it. Not a particularly important scene, but very gruesome. Um, and it had other elements that ended up being very much associated with the subgenre, like real animal killings. And Lenzi's film was released in Germany with the title Mondo Cannibale. Um, and again, Mondo movies are part of that because Mondo movies had been very successful in um, in the in Germany specifically. So it comes out as Mondo Cannibale. It was a hit. The producers, Giorgio Carlo Rossi and Ovidio Giassonitis, then Assonitis goes in a different direction, and only Rossi remains, were asked to do a second film, which was Last Cannibal World or Jungle Holocaust. And it was supposed to have Lenzi as a director, Memelai and Ivar Asimov as actors. Lenzi, we get into this in the book. There are various reasons why he didn't accept. However, Memelai and Ivar Asimov remained. Lenzi's original film, Man from Deep River, is obviously inspired by one of the classics of revisionist westerns, which is Man Called Horse by Silverstein with Richard Harris. Which, funnily enough, I mean, revisionist westerns, kind of found very fertile ground, were very successful in Italy. Man Called Horse, Soldier Blue,
Mm.
Man from the Wilderness, also with Richard Harris by Serafian. A number of these revisionist westerns. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, which is obviously very different in nature, from 1969, was a big hit in Italy. Westerns in generally were always very successful in Italy. Um, but yeah, that was sort of the input. Um, um, the film with Richard Harris to sort of make an adventure film set in an exotic land. And then film by film, every cannibal movie brought it to more extremes. But what is interesting about the cannibal subgenre, there are not that many films. I mean, we have Deep River Savages, Lost Cannibal World, um, uh, Emmanuel and the Last Cannibals, The Mountain of the Cannibal God, um, Eaten Alive, Cannibal Ferox, obviously Cannibal Holocaust, um, Massacre in Dinosaur Valley, Catherine Miles' story, and The Green Inferno. Obviously, I'm referring to the Antonio Climati Green
Yes,
Inferno, not the LA Rock.
yes,
Um, then we have hybrids, we have cut and run, zombie holocaust, in a way anthropophagus, in another kind of way, Cannibal Apocalypse by Antonio Margheriti. Then,
yes.
of course, there are the two Franco films, White Cannibal Queen and Devil Hunter. Then we've got well, I mean, I discussed them in the book, but I mean, way, way, way into the future, we have um, the two Bruno Mattei direct-to-video films that were shot in the Philippines, in the Land of Cannibals and Cannibal World. So all this is discussed in the book, but the pure films are not that many. Um, but what is interesting is that each film within the subgenre is taking a hint from the previous one and whispering something in the ear of the subsequent one. So you can really see each one sort of is there's a continuous dialogue. Um, it's it's a problematic subgenre. It's extremely problematic for the implicit racism, for the animal killings, for
Mhm.
the number of rapes, and for gender violence present within it. But it's interesting because it's autochthonous, because it's unknowingly sometimes political, because they were made in actual exotic, except for a couple, they were actually made in exotic lands in South America, in Southeast Asia, Ceylon, in Malaysia. So it's it's kind of a unique subgenre, which I felt at least that it had not been tackled properly.
I agree. I agree. Uh, when you do the interviews with cast and crew, uh, are they sort of surprised how popular their movies have become now, or are they like disgruntled that it wasn't maybe at the time as popular as because a lot of most of the movies have become really cult favorites, and it's I think it's incredibly interesting how a lot of these movies are seemingly bigger now than they were when they were produced. Are they happy for the recognition they're getting? I'm getting at.
Well, I think what they're happy about now is more the respect
Okay.
their films receive. Um, because commercial success they had already experienced. I mean, Castellari, Lenzi,
Mm.
all the directors we mentioned, and many, many others. Not all of them, of course, but a lot of them had. These were directors that were earning a lot of money. They were becoming rich. Um, they were earning money. They were traveling the world. They, at the time, being a director meant living in a parallel universe. Now the life of director is a lot more normal. He's living way more normally. I mean, unless you're a huge Hollywood player, but an average director is a normal guy. At the time, you had way more money. They were earning way more money than an average director, even American now. Um, they were traveling the world. Um, you know, uh, I'm fucking everything that moved. So it's they had a lot of fun. These directors were not they were not these poor little things that didn't um and a lot of their films were very financially successful. So I think what they appreciate now the most is the fact that some of their films uh are receiving more critical appreciation than they did at the time.
Yes. Yes. I get. I would certainly hope that's the case as well for them, that they do enjoy all the appreciation and the respect that they get these days, because uh, Italian's genre cinema sort of has become, to me at least, it seems that it's become even more popular in the past few years than ever before. Do you know really why the reason? Is it because of all the different labels that are releasing these sort of movies now?
Well, I mean, people appreciated them. Again, not every film and not every genre. People appreciated them at the time, so it would make sense they would continue to appreciate it. I think it has to do also with the fact that um, they're different, they're accessible films. I mean, anybody can enjoy most of these films. They're accessible, but they're also completely otherworldly.
Yes.
They films don't get made like this anymore. They don't look
No.
like that. They don't feel like that's a different texture.
Yes.
So I think it has a lot to do with the fact that um, they are this alien thing, which are often, I mean, for people that are interested in sort of hard hitting topics and violence, they're more violent than anything, that gets made now. They're more outspoken and outrageous. And I think there's a level, even among young people, of fascination towards, you know, something that they feel could never be done now.
Yes. Do you think it will ever be? Will we ever see a boom of Giallo movies or Polizieski ever again, or is it like a time capsule?
No, because but I don't think any. I think we will see. I mean, Italy will hopefully make some interesting films, even among the genres you mentioned. But I think, um, I mean, it's what we said before about the film industry as a whole and film
Yes.
as a medium. I don't see a renaissance on that level ever happening again, to be honest, in any country.
I pretty much agree 100% because it seems to me like feature films and big time cinema is slowly, maybe not slowly, but it's dying out, unfortunately, because of streaming and all that. It's gonna take over, and the cinemas are eventually going to close because, as you said before, young people don't have the time to sit and watch a movie for 2 hours.
Yeah, but everybody, because the what I was saying before is affecting older people, younger
Yeah,
people, middle-aged people. It's a collective problem. It's just that younger people are born into it, whereas older people have sort of transitioned into it. But it's
mm,
it's a collective problem.
definitely. So I guess we've gone like over an hour. It went very quickly, and I could have gone several more hours post talked about
Well,
this, but
if you have me on again, I we can talk a lot more.
absolutely. I hope to do this again soon. And I want to thank you so much. Do you have any plugs? Do you want to, things that you have coming up?
Well, you mentioned the book. It's coming
Yes.
out from Pulse,
Yes.
and
Great company, by the way. I have
it's
the
it.
previous 3 books from them, so they're really fantastic company.
So yeah, Pulse. It's still available in pre-order, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yep. Well, I want to say thank you again, and well,
Thank
let's
you.
do it again soon. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
There we go. And stream. And